Aiy-yu-kwee, Malita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian. Today I will be doing my winter book haul. So we have a guest today. This is Chai. This is her new sleeping spot. So you'll say hi? No, you just wanna. She's gonna be sleeping, so I apologize if she snores. She's a pretty loud snorer. So as I said, I'm doing my winter book haul. So basically these are any books that I received, bought, was gifted, whatever. Basically what came into my possession from December to February. So these books aren't going to be in any particular order, and I apologize now if I don't have a clear idea on what they're about. I tend to, I've said it before, I tend to just read the synopsis just to make sure that I want to buy it, but as soon as I buy it and have it in my, or get it, or however I receive this, as soon as it's in my possession and it's been sitting on my recently gotten shelf after a while, I tend to just forget, and I don't mind that because I feel like a lot of synopsi now contain quite a bit of spoilers. So I try to go into a lot of these books just kind of having a vague idea of what they're about, and I don't typically reread them unless I'm looking for something specific. The first book I have here is Too Much Lip. By Melissa Lucashenko. I apologize if I said that completely wrong. But this was given to me by Harper Bia, which is a imprint of HarperCollins in Australia. This follows an Indigenous woman of Australia who is on the run of sorts. She's like on a stolen Harley and ends up going back to her hometown to see her dad, as I believe he is dying. But when she's there, she realizes that there's more going on, specifically a development that is threatening to happen on their spiritual home. So she's trying to stop it. And other things ensue. I am excited to get into this at some point. But yeah, thank you so much to Harper Via for sending me this finished copy. This next book I was super excited to get because I've heard nothing but great things about it, and that is Cemetery Boys by Ayden Thomas. This, I believe I had wanted to read originally in October for a Halloween themed readathon. It was our group book. I didn't have it at the time, but it did inspire me to get it into my possession, so I did. I believe this is about a trans boy who is trying to prove to his family that he can be a bruja because they don't quite accept his transition yet, and part of what I'm going to completely butcher the synopsis. He is trying to resurrect a friend and ends up resurrecting the ghost or spirit of the school bully instead, and antics ensue, possibly a romance. So these next three I got at my local bookshop. I'm so happy that they're open. I know I am always safe when I go in there. Everyone's having sanitizer. I was just happy to I love just picking up books that look interesting from the bookstore that I wouldn't normally like see or hear about through BookTube or on Goodreads or on Storygraph. So one of those being Beyond Rosie the Riveter, Women of the World War II in America, Women of World War II in American popular graphic art. So I think this is going to be a bit of art. This is going to be about history. I think it's going to be really fun and interesting. The next book is Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Menescalco. I don't think I've read anything from Carrie Menescalco before. but this one sounded really interesting. I think I was in a very witchy mood when I picked this up. And I believe this is about twin witch sisters, and one of them ends up getting murdered. The surviving twin wants to seek revenge for her sister's death and ends up meeting Wrath, a prince of hell that she has been warned about since she was a child, though he claims he's on her side, tasked by his master to figure out why women are dying on the island that they're on. So it sounds really interesting. I absolutely love the cover art. Again, I just love finding random things on bookshelves. This was super interesting to me, and I think I was in that like very Halloween-y mood when I went and visited the bookshop last, and that is The Last Werewolf by Glenn Duncan. This is a dark thriller following Jake Marlowe, who is the last werewolf. After 200 years, he prefers good scotch. He has a voracious libido and gets a mad craving for meat every full moon. But he's in a kind of a crisis right now. He's trying to figure out if he really wants to keep living this 1,000-year-old legend, and ends up debating if he wants to end his life. However, there are two groups, one old and one new, that want him very much alive and for their own reasons. The next two are my Book of the Month picks for December, and the first is The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans. This is a novella and stories. I'm not sure what this is about outside of like short stories about race and US history. It sounded really, like I said, I tend to read the synopsises before I get them, specifically with Book of the Month as well, just because, I mean, you're only given 5 options, so I like to make sure that I pick the one that's most interesting to me, and this one really piqued my interest, but I couldn't tell you why now. And then my bonus book for December was What Would Frida Do? I believe this is a nonfiction by Ariana Davis that goes into Frida Kahlo's history and her influence on Latinx and feminist icons. This next one was actually a fun little gift. I participated in a Secret Santa thing through work. It was all safe. It was through online. Everything was online. We're all telecommuting, and so it was just something fun to kind of bring to the table as we were all working from home, and it was super cute and fun. I wish it was a bit more personal, because even though I knew who I was sending my Secret Santa to, like I knew of him, but don't know him personally. I just know him through the grapevine of work. So that's one thing. I just can't wait for social events to come back so that we are able to like have more fun with these type of events. But what I ended up getting what my Secret Santa got me was Women in Science, 50 Fearless Pioneers Who Changed the World, written and illustrated by Rachel Ignopsky. Again, apologize for my pronunciation. But I've seen a series of these books come out, and I absolutely enjoy the covers. I think they're really just simple but fun, and I know this is just going to scratch the surface of women in science, but I figure it's a fun little start, and if anything, like I hope to just be able to read it and eventually give it to my niece. But I was interested in it, and I'm interested in other ones like it. So, and this next one I actually did an exchange with my friends. We both had I have 2 friends that are married to each other. They are absolutely an adorable couple, but they are both avid readers, but they don't tend to keep a whole lot of the books that they read, only some of their favorites that they know they're going to reread. So they had just gone through a bunch of books and were planning to get rid of them, and so was I. So we met up, safely and exchanged books that we had planned on getting rid of and what I ended up getting from them, which is one, thankfully. So I still managed to like get my numbers down. But that was Tuesday Mooney Talks to Ghosts by Cait Raculia. And I believe this is like a mystery thriller of sorts about Tuesday Mooney, who actually I think this is like a Finding Things thing. There's some kind of puzzle scavenger hunt thing for I think a treasure in the city. That's all I really know about it. Oh, someone decided to move. I've seen that. Hey. How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin. I finished 2020 reading N.K. Jemison's The City We Became and absolutely loved it. It was one of my top 3 books of 2020, and I wanted to get more into her works. So I had heard that The City We Became was a bit different from her regular works, so in order to figure out her writing style, I decided to pick this up, as it is a collection of her shorter stories that eventually she turned into series. So The City We Became is in here. I believe there are a couple others. So far I am loving it. I think I'm 70% of the way through. I keep going back and forth between reading this physically and listening to it. I thought I was gonna get this done in January and ended up my return date for the library audiobook had come. I couldn't renew it because there were several people behind me that had it on hold. So I ordered a physical copy only to be able to get the audiobook back through my library. So I'm back. I read for a bit and then got the audiobook back. So now I'm listening to the audiobook again. Well, the cat's taken refuge behind my laptop. Next book is Water Lily by Ella Cara Deloria. I believe this follows Bluebird and her grandmother. This is a book I'm reading for a group read. No, Kim from Native Lady Book Warrior is the one that suggested this for our group read, so we're all excited to get into it. Next is We Are Not Free by Tracy Chi. I actually heard about this through Monica Kim at She's So Monica, and I haven't heard about it since, but I was really interested in it. This follows Japanese American teenagers after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and it just kind of follows their life as it changes and as America changes and curfews start happening for Japanese Americans and the discrimination that ends up going against them, despite being Americans. So I've heard this is fairly heavy, but I heard it's really good, all from Monica. I absolutely love this cover. I just think it's fun. Next is Earth Eater by Dolores Reyes. This is I don't know if this is a translated work, but it follows a woman in Argentina who has a compulsion to eat earth. But when she does, something magical happens. She has visions of the murdered and disappeared. So others in her community are trying to get information on what happened to their loved ones. It's supposed to be haunting and interesting. Another one that I absolutely love the cover for. This is textured, so that's awesome. It feels like dried acrylic paint. Next is Remote Control by Annette Okorafor. I read Akata Witch and Akata Warrior and absolutely loved them. So when I heard about this, I had to pick it up. This was a January release that Bear from Brody let me know about. They let a group of us know about it during a live show, and I remember having it in the back of my mind and then seeing the cover again. I was like, oh yeah, I need that. So specifically after I read the synopsis, I'm not going to reread it, but I will read you a quote from the top. She's the adopted child of the angel of death. Beware of her, mind her, death guards her like one of its own. So I'm actually really, yeah, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous cover. The next book I have was actually gifted to me from Neil, at Neil Yazzie on Instagram, because he is amazing and a book wizard. And that is Storm of Locusts by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is the second book in the Sixth World series, inspired by Dani stories. Follows Maggie Hosky, who after the Great Flood, after basically climate change changes the world, just before that, the Navajo end up putting up a wall around their reservation and to protect them from the outside world. Once the floods came, it opened up, the world goes into the sixth world. They were in the fifth, now they're in the sixth. And what this does is it brings back Navajo gods of legend. So Coyote and a bunch of others, but what that also means too is that it brought back some of the monsters. Maggie Hosky is a monster slayer and was trained by one of the gods to be a monster slayer. But then when her mentor leaves her unexpectedly, she's left questioning what she did wrong, if she's truly a monster. Yeah. So I read the first one a while ago, probably like a year and a half ago. I do want to reread it before going into Storm of Locusts, just because I have mixed feelings about it. Okay, I know I've been saying I love all these covers, but like seriously, I love this cover. This is The Dark Tide by Alicia Jasinska. Sorry. I don't remember too much about this other than that there's a sapphic romance in here. Something about there needing to be a sacrifice to the tides in order for this community to be safe. But instead of sacrificing, she ends up getting saved by another woman and they have a romance, and so they don't want to sacrifice each other. Next is The Tao of Raven by Einstein Hayes. So I got this with the intention of being able to read it with Erin and Dani's book club, which I'll have linked down in the description down below. Erin from Erin's Library and Dani from Thunderbirdwomanreads created a book club that they're reading Indigenous memoirs all year. So this is an Alaskan Native memoir, but after getting this, Einstein Hayes actually wrote another memoir called The Blonde Indian. I think that's kind of like the first one to read before this one. I'm not entirely sure, but it's something that I prefer to read in publication order. So I have this one. Now I need to get Blonde Indian and read that before going into this. But I believe this one I believe Blonde Indian talks about Erin Hayes is returning to her clinging home in Juneau. This one kind of reflects on how Native Alaskans are still isolated on their own land, how there's still prejudices. This one is The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. This is part of her, The Dream Blood. And it's funny because I just read this, I just listened to this story in How Long Till Black Future Month. But this one is a fantasy where where peace is the only law. There's shadows that are growing. There are things called the Gatherers, who are the keepers of this piece, and their duty is to harvest the magic of the sleeping mind and use it to heal and soothe and kill those who are corrupted. The most famous of gatherers is finding that he has to protect the woman he was actually sent to kill, lest he wants to watch the city devoured by war and forbidden magic. This was kind of, I bought this and then started reading How Long Till Black Future Month. So I'm glad I liked the short story. Otherwise I think I'd be in trouble. But I'm interested to see where this goes, because the story itself was really interesting. The next two I'm actually blaming Kim from Lady Book Warrior for. I recently saw her haul and promptly paused it and just wanted to go to a second-hand bookstore. Once again, I did it safely, and while I was out doing other errands, just briefly popped by and found a couple of books that I have been wanting to get but wasn't sure of the price, and then when I saw them at these secondhand bookstores, I was like, yeah, I'm getting them. So the first is Code Talkers by Joseph Bruchac, and this is about a novel about the Navajo Marines in World War II. My dad was in the Marines, his dad was in the Marines, so it's interesting to me. I also have The Plague of Doves by Louise Erdrich. This one I just kind of bought on a whim. I don't actually really know what... Oh, it's a murder mystery, I think. No, I don't know what this is, but I'm interested to try more Louise Erdrich. So these next two are actually going to be the same book, but I got them from different people or different organizations. And that is The Removed by Brandon Hobson. I recently did a full review of this, so if you want to go check that out. But I read this in January for its release in February. I believe it came out February 2nd. I didn't anticipate getting this. I am so happy that Echo Books reached out to me, so thank you so much for this advanced reader's copy. Again, another cover that is gorgeous. This follows a Cherokee family as they are about to celebrate the 15th anniversary of their son's death. Their son was shot by a police officer after being suspected of having a weapon, and they are still living through the grief. They are still trying to figure out how to live with the grief, how to move on from it, how to, yeah. So this whole book is the couple days leading up to this anniversary, where they typically do a bonfire, have dinner, and just kind of chat about Rey's life before death. So each of these family members are finding that the line is being blurred between reality and the spirit world. This book is full of Cherokee stories, as well as ancestral stories, as well as family history. I absolutely love the stories in here, and they're told quite different. I'm not used to open-ended stories where nothing's like tied up nice and neat at the end. It's just kind of just open for interpretation, and at first I was kind of frustrated with that, but I liked how it was different. I also liked how there was this, it kind of gave me hope for the family. So yeah, if you want to know more about my thoughts on that, I'll leave my link for the video in the cards, as well as the description down below. So that was the ARC copy that I received from the publisher, which I am so thankful for. But I also got it for my January book of the month. This was an early release offered by Book of the Month, and I was just so happy to see that another Indigenous author was being promoted through Book of the Month, and bought a finished copy because I wanted to support the author, but I also want to encourage Book of the Month to continue putting offering Indigenous authors. So I also ended up getting for January's Book of the Month as an extra book, Queenie by Candace Carty Williams. I absolutely love that illustration of her hair. It is so detailed. I absolutely love it. But I believe this follows a young black woman in the UK who ends up, I think she ends up breaking up with someone, and through her heartache ends up making like bad and worse decisions as she's going, and she's trying to figure out her life. So like, I haven't read this yet, so if that's not what that is, I apologize, but that's what I think. Next is Silver in the Wood. This is another one. So there's very few times where I'll just buy a book without reading synopsises or synopsi. This was one of them, just because I've heard nothing but good things about it. So because it's so short, all I really had to do was listen to Cait from Cait, and I believe there was a couple of others on BookTube rant about and rave about this book. And so I was just gonna like, sure, why not? And I think I briefly like skimmed the synopsis. I honestly can't remember doing that. I'm hoping I like it. I don't want to read it. So this one, I think I saw it in the bookstore and the cover attracted me. But then when reading it, I was like, okay. As it kind of gave me like Tuesday Mooney vibes, but I haven't heard anything about it. Like, I didn't see it anywhere. This is the debut novel by Polly Crosby called The Book of Hidden Wonders. And so it's like a book about books, which I'm surprised I haven't heard about that on BookTube, since that seems to be like a trope that everyone seems to love. But I'm wondering if it's because it came out the same time as The Midnight Library that I'm not hearing very much about it. I have yet to read this yet, but I believe this follows a young girl called Romilly Kemp, and her father's a painter. He ends up creating these children's books that features a character just like Romilly. And as he gets more and more famous for these books, more exotic foods start appearing on the table, but strangers start appearing at their doorstep, thinking that his books will lead to some kind of secret treasure. But as time goes on, her father kind of encloses in on himself. He's paranoid about the world, and he just kind of loses sight of what life's purpose is. So he just kind of closes in on himself, and Romilly is trying to reconnect with him through his illustrations. And through that, she finds that his books actually do lead her somewhere. There are clues meant just for her, but it's not to treasure, it's to a secret that will help her better understand her family. So it has books, it has illustrations, it has finding things, and family secrets. I'm super excited for this. The next two books I'm blaming on Erin, but you know, I say blame, but really I'm happy that Erin and all these people are able to share these things with me. So Erin posted in her Instagram stories, I believe last month, that she and her sister plan on reading through all the Star Wars books to be able to get more understand Star Wars. I'm not too sure of their purpose, but they plan on reading through all the Star Wars books. And this was something that I've been wanting to do and just don't know where to start. There are so many and because of how big the Star Wars universe is, there's so many different authors, and so it's kind of hard to figure out where to start. And Erin actually gave me this link to a fan base that actually has all the books sorted. There's even a timeline of like where the books are supposed to be comparatively to the movies, and if it's canon versus just kind of extended universe. It's really exciting. And so after she gave me that information, I immediately bought the first two books of a recommended reading list. There's 5 books total in this first, like, getting yourself kind of familiar with the world and with the politics and everything. And I plan on getting the rest of the 3, but these are the 2 that I'm starting out with for now. But that is Star Wars Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. I have not read anything by Claudia Gray before, but I do understand that she's quite a big YA author from my understanding. I believe there was a series that I remember seeing on BookTube years and years ago that was really popular. I think it had something to do with parallel universes or time travel or something. I couldn't get into it, but they have very beautiful covers. I just couldn't get into it. So I don't necessarily know. These are another ones that I don't necessarily know what they're about. I am a big Star Wars fan. I am a Star Wars fan. I won't say big Star Wars fan or anything, just because I think there's something with Star Wars that kind of gets fans competitive with each other. I remember wearing a Star Wars t-shirt to the store, and someone's like, this guy checking me out at the store was like, oh, you're a Star Wars fan? What did you think of episode 9? And I have a hard time keeping it straight in my head, so I had to ask him which one's episode 9, and he just kind of looked at me like, the last one. I'm like, oh, so Skywalker Rising, just say that. But it's like there's this competitiveness to it. But yeah, this is the first one that it recommends to read, and this one is the second one, which is Star Wars Darth Bane Path of Destruction, a novel of the Old Republic by Drew Karpyshyn. So I was really debating if I wanted paperback copies of these because they are from different authors and I assume different publishers. That's what it looks like. I don't think I'll be able to find everything the same format. That's one thing that is something that really shouldn't matter, but it does to me just to look uniform. But I couldn't write, I don't know, I just couldn't imagine myself spending so much on a hardback. And originally it said paperback, and I thought there was a difference between paperback and mass market paperback, and apparently there's not. One I've actually read before and got rid of. I've mentioned in previous videos that I actually used to have quite an extensive book collection before I started watching BookTube, but I think this was like early high school. And before I got into college, I just kind of purged everything and just got rid of a lot of my books. Couldn't tell you why. I think it was just because, like, you know, I thought I was moving out. I don't know, just thought I needed more adult books or something. And one of them in particular that I read that I remember liking, I thought of recently and wanted it back, so I repurchased it. And that is Red Riding Hood by Catherine, oh wait, no, who's this by? This says Introduction by Catherine Harding, but who is it actually by? Okay, Sarah Blakely Cartwright. So when I originally had this, it was becoming a major motion picture. It was not yet a major motion picture. That seems really mean to take away the author name of the book and just like put in the director's introduction to the book. But I remember when I originally had this book, it had like a sleeve to go over it, but I remember really enjoying the cover art. And that's one thing that I'm realizing is that I actually really kind of like Red Riding Hood retellings, though I've only remember reading 2, this one and Scarlet from the Marissa Meyer series. But I'm hoping to get more into Red Riding Hood retellings just to see. It feels, I don't know if this is necessarily something that like it feels like something I'm actually interested in, but it feels like one of those things that, like, you know, booktubers have their certain like little thing that they do that like they're kind of obsessed with. Haley from Haley in Bookland is like obsessed with Alice in Wonderland. Sam from Thoughts on Tomes is like constantly trying to find Hades and Persephone retellings, stuff like that. And for some reason I was just like, Red Riding Hood. I want Red Riding Hood retelling. I'm not sure why. Mostly because I feel like it could be a great horror. And I don't, horror fantasy? I don't know. Maybe I just have like my own idea of wanting to write a Red Riding Hood retelling, and it's just coming out as like, I just need Red Riding Hood retellings. I don't know. But yeah, so I repurchased this one. I do hope to reread it just to see if I do like it as much as I remember. I feel like a couple of these, this current one, and Silver in the Wood is actually something that I immediately purchased after watching Cait from Chaptercvii's bookshelf tour. I'm not sure why, but after watching that, it kind of just put me in this like wanting to read gothic fiction. And so I immediately like got Silver in the Wood because Cait had read it and said that she really enjoyed it. So I'm like, okay, bought that one. That's also when I wanted my Red Riding Hood back. But I also ended up purchasing Dracula by Bram Stoker. I have not read this before. I am only this far into it. I was reading it audibly through my library for a bit, but realized that I just wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been. So I think it's going to be more of a book that I read physically. So, and then of course, after I purchased this one, I went to the bookstore and saw that they had the pop art versions that Cait from Chaptercvii had on her bookshelves, and I immediately just wanted them because they're so cool looking. But I already have this version of Dracula, and I have another version of Frankenstein here already, and I figure I should read them before actually getting more copies of them, just to make sure I like it. I remember watching the movie Bram Stoker's Dracula, the movie, featuring Keanu Reeves, Gary Oldman, and Winona Ryder, was one that my mom and my brother watched frequently. I vaguely remember bits and pieces. I don't think I've ever watched it from start to finish before though. And yeah, it's curious. My mom actually wants to know if the book is better than the movie or not. So we'll see. Maybe it's another movie that I read shortly after, a couple months after I read the book, so I can forget some things and not criticize the director. And then these next three are my recent visit to my small local bookshop, and found some reads that some that I haven't heard of before that I was happy to see. Some I have seen before and just been meaning to pick up, and one of those is In My Own Moccasins, a memoir of resilience by Helen Knott. I believe this is a heavy memoir, as Helen Knott talks about the fallout of residential schools, racial injustice, alcoholism, drugs, and despair. Very good things. I believe this is another one that Dani and Erin plan on reading for their book club this year, but I'm hoping I'm able to like read it along with them and be a part of the discussion. I think it would be really interesting. So the next I actually found on the discount table, which I love perusing every now and then, and it's usually either because they're damaged in some way, and I don't think this one is, or they weren't selling and so the store's just getting rid of them. But this one is Vampires, Genesis and Resurrection from Count Dracula to the Vampirella, by Christopher Frayling. And I believe this is just a history on vampires, which I think would be really interesting to go through, though it is quite the chunker, though it's not 500 pages, so it just looks big. And then this, I love looking at nonfiction. I think nonfiction is very interesting, though I'm always intimidated to pick them up for some reason. I find it easier to listen to through an audiobook. Apologize if you can hear my cat snoring. But this one I don't think I'll be able to find an audiobook for, but I am curious about it, and it's called The Great Vanishing Act, edited by Kathleen Rattiri and Norbert Hill, and this is basically about blood quantum and the future of Native nations. What the back says, the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934 was the U.S. government's attempt to define who Indians were. Among the criteria the act set was a blood quantum, which declared that Indians were all other persons of one half or more Indian blood. Today, many tribes wrestle with the legacy of blood quantum and Indian identity as they work to manage tribal enrollment in social services. As the bloodlines grow increasingly diluted within a few generations, recognized tribes might legally disappear. Through essays, personal stories, case studies, satire, and poetry, The Great Vanishing Act brings together writers from around the world to explore the biological and cultural metaphor of blood quantum, the most critical issue facing Indigenous populations in the 21st century. I think this is going to be an interesting read. I think it's going to be very relevant. I know that it is constantly something that is on my mind as an Indigenous person. I am able to enroll, and my partner is not Indigenous, so I have to keep in mind that our kids would be enough to enroll, but my grandkids would not, assuming that my kids don't have kids with an Indigenous person, if they even decide to have kids. So it's constantly something that we as a people have to worry about, and it's really something that I feel like we shouldn't have to. I know a lot of people within the community, Indigenous community, have said that that's our own fault for diluting ourselves, which is really ass backwards, I feel like. But yeah, and some even believe that because of their high blood quantum that they should have more say in a tribe than others. It's really just kind of, it's a lot. I feel like this is going to have some interesting perspectives and stories. So, you are so loud. Okay, and then finally my February book of the month picks. The first, I always end up picking two, and then I question why I have so many. But the first is Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. I believe this is about a Cuban family. This is about a Colombian family and how they became to occupy two different countries, two different worlds. We're following Talia as she's trying to get to an airplane to take her to the United States. But we're also, I think, going to follow her parents as they fell in love during a civil war and social unrest. I think this should be really interesting. I have not read anything set in Colombia. I don't know much about it. I think this will be quite eye-opening. Patricia Engel herself is a dual citizen of Colombia and the US. It's short, but I think it'll be really impactful. So, and again, that cover extra that I picked for book of the month was Aftershocks by Nadia Owasu. This is a memoir, and it's usually like people talk about yellow or pink or purple book spines and how they like them and how don't often see them, and it wasn't until I saw this book that I'm like, deep red is something that we don't see very often. And this is absolutely gorgeous. But I believe this follows a young Nadia Owasu after it's Nadia trying to figure out who she is in terms of identity. Her Armenian American mother abandoned her when she was 2 and would periodically reappear only to vanish again. Her father is Ghanaian. The great hero of her life died when she was 13, and her stepmother took care of her but would constantly weigh her down with revelations that were either a huge bombshell of a family secret or a complete and utter lie. Nadia kind of talks about her feeling stateless and homeless and trying to find solid ground in her life. So I think this should be really interesting. I absolutely love, like I said, the cover of it is stunning. So there are 3 books that I did forget about, mostly because they weren't in this office. But this one in particular really just kind of stood out to me, and I just bought it on I did read the back, but I should have, I think, looked through the art. But it's really interesting. I haven't finished it yet. I think I barely got into it. But it is Pure Trance by Junko Mizuno. But it just really piqued my interest. That cover is gorgeous. The art is gorgeous. And basically this is a collection of comics, I believe. It's like following the Third World War, humankind left the toxic surface of the world and built an underground city to survive. There are serious social problems, and in this new society, hyperorexia or severe overeating is a side effect of Pure Trance, a life-sustaining pill. But yeah, the cover really intrigued me. It is adults only, as I believe there is some adult content in here, but I'm interested to see what it's about. Again, it was just something I kind of saw at the bookstore and was intrigued by, so I bought it because I liked the art on the cover, and the synopsis sounded interesting. The next one I got sent through the Valentine's readathon. There is a challenge, not challenge, but a kind of thing you can sign up for, to be a bookish cupid, in which you are paired or given a random person who also signed up, and you send them your favorite book. You can look through their Amazon wish list if they provide one, or their Goodreads if they provide it. And so I was happy to do so for someone else, and then someone received me as well. And I ended up getting The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. I don't remember. I was actually really surprised. I was so confused when I received this in the mail, because I was like, I didn't order this. But basically it follows a con artist who has come to the sparkling city of Nadazera with one goal, is to trick her way into the noble house, securing a fortune for her and her sister. But then a corrupt nightmare magic begins to weave its way through the city of dreams. The poisonous views of its nobility and the shadowy dangers of its impoverished underbelly become tangled. And Ren, the con artist, is at the heart. So this is huge. First off, 640 pages, 657, which it makes me, I'm kind of comparing it to like Priory of the Orange Tree, which I know is like at 800. But like some of the formatting of these books, I feel like it shouldn't have to be this big, but it is. It's a freaking brick. But thank you so much to my Cupid for sending this to me. It's very much appreciated. You will eventually get to it. And my last book I have to haul is Anoka by, isn't this size adorable, by Shane Hawk. I follow Shane Hawk on Twitter, and he had said that for like $10 we could get a signed copy of Anoka, and I immediately took him up on that offer. I think he only had so much, so I was really happy. I believe this is, I'll just read you the back because I don't know either. But I believe this is horror. And it says, welcome to Anoka, Minnesota, a small city just outside of the Twin Cities, dubbed the Halloween capital of the world since 1937. Here before you lie several tales involving bone collectors, pagan witches, werewolves, skeletal bison, and cloned children. It is up to you to decipher between fact and fiction, as the author has woven historical facts into his narratives. With his debut horror collection, Cheyenne and Arapaho, author Shane Hawk explores themes of family, grief, loneliness, and identity through the lens of Indigenous life. So yeah, it sounds like horror. And it sounds like it's going to be really interesting. It sounds like a format that I have yet to explore. Like I said, I haven't read too many horror. I only read 3 last year, but I do hope to get into this, as Shane Hawk also just created his own imprint for a publication. What was it called? I can picture the logo and it's absolutely gorgeous. I loved it. But I can't think of the name. I know it's it's Black Hills Press. That's what it is. And he's actually selling his merchandise for it. So if you want to support Shane Hawk, I highly suggest that. I'll leave that in my description down below as well. I know that I'm excited to see what all he plans on doing. It's always interesting to see his Twitter and see updates on various different projects that he's doing. So yeah, thank you so much to Shane Hawk for this. I'm excited but nervous to delve in. So yeah, that is my winter book haul. If you've read any of these, please let me know what your thoughts are down in the description down below. No spoilers. I have yet to read a lot of these. I am not going to lift them up for you. I have noodle arms and I do not have upper body strength at all. I have finger strength. I do not have upper body strength. And there are just too many books. I'm not going to even try. So yeah, if you've read any of these, let me know your thoughts. If you haven't heard of any of these and I've piqued your interest, let me know. Otherwise, all the links that I have mentioned, anyone that I had mentioned that has social media, I will link in my description down below so you can check them out. I highly suggest you do, as I believe they are all great resources for finding new books. And otherwise, yeah, and I will see you again soon. I hope that you are in the mental mindset to enjoy your reading. Chew!